Just a reminder, if you're going to speak on a subject, you need to fill out a speaker request form. They're available behind the podium over there to the... Mr. Seffner can actually lead you the right way. Legal and Finance. Oops, sorry. Wow. I'd like to welcome everybody to the 2015 April 15th Happy Tax Day Legal and Finance Committee for the City of Rapid City. First order of business is the roll call and determination of a quorum.
Here.
Here. Up next, we have the adoption of the agenda. Does anybody have any items they wish to add to or delete from the agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on to general public comment, which is now a time for members of the public to discuss or express concerns of the council on any issue not on the agenda. Action will not be taken at the meeting on any issue not on the agenda except for placement on the agenda by unanimous vote of the council members present. I currently have no speaker request forms for general public comment. Does anybody wish to speak on anything not on the agenda? Okay, moving on out of there, go on to consent items numbers 1 through 10. Now is the time for public comment on items 1 through 10. I have no speaker request forms for items 1 through 10 on the consent calendar. Does anybody wish to speak on those items? Okay, I'm going to close public comment on those items. I'm going to go to council lights. I'm going to remove item number 4 and item number 8 as per request of the legal department. Anybody have anything else they want to remove? I've entertained a motion to approve items 1 through 10 exclusive of 4 and 8. And a motion by Nordstrom, a second by Laurenti. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 4 is authorize the mayor and finance officer to sign a memorandum of understanding between the City of Rapid City and International Association of Firefighters, Local 1040, to revise the membership and collective bargaining unit and shorten the term of collective bargaining agreement. Do you want to speak, Mr. Landine?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is being reviewed by the union right now, and that's why nothing is linked. We just ask that you continue this for 2 weeks.
Motion by Nordstrom, second by Weifenbach. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 8 is introduction and first reading of ordinance 6047 regarding supplemental appropriation number 2 for 2015. This simply was put in error on the agenda as a consent item, so since it's an ordinance, we're moving it out for special separate consideration. Any entertain a motion? Motion by Laurenti to approve, second by Nordstrom. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Now we're on to non-consent items 11 through 19. I will open public comment on those items. I will go to Mr. Dan Seffner is the winner, number 13. Sir, you have 3 minutes. I'm sure you know the drill better than we do.
I've learned it a little bit. Thank you, Alderman Lewis. Dan Seffner, Destination Rapid City. What we've brought up prior is 10-hour meters between 6th Street and 8th Street on Kansas City Street. We have met with everyone on that street. The Doll has been someone who's been after that for quite some time. It's right on the corner of 7th and Kansas City Street. And right now, there are 8 or 9 10-hour meters up by the Quest building, but nothing on the other side of the street that is by the Doll that are only 2-hour meters. So there's 23 meters there, 2-hour meters, roughly on Kansas City Street. And what we're looking at doing is making all those 10-hour parking. What we have decided to do as Destination Rapid City, and I have spoken with parking enforcement, is they just really need to revamp the interior of the meters. The meter cases and everything are fine. They're new when Kansas City Street was done, but the meter cases inside will need to be replaced and redone. I have spoken with Loyan. We've done this process before. It's roughly about $140 a meter. And between all the meters between 6th and 8th Street, we're looking at a rough cost of around $5,000, which Destination Rapid City has agreed to pick up the tab. And Loyan and the parking meter gals can do this themselves. They've done it before. They're very efficient at it, and it does not become an issue. So what we're looking at, again, I even hate to bring up the word parking because it all makes us cringe a little bit, makes Chad and my hair stand on end. And we know it's always an issue, but we're always looking for long-term parking, for employee parking. U.S. Bank building everything is right there. The Doll is looking at long-term parking for people who go into the Doll. They've been talking about it for quite some time, but it's a request that I want to bring forward with our group. And again, we're willing to pay the cost of installing the meters and changing the mechanism. I stand for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Steffner. I'm sure you'll be there for any questions when we
Thank you.
get to that item, number 13.
Okay.
No. We're still on public comment. Anytime. Mr. Nason, jeez. You have 3 minutes, sir. I assume this is on item number
11.
11.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to be present today to encourage the Legal and Finance Committee here to do the right thing by rolling back and splitting up the 2 funds related to Ordinance 6018. Again, just as a reminder, the public did vote on this issue through a referendum. Again, 61% of the public has made their statement very clear that they did not want to expand the Civic Center, and it seems to me that by keeping the financing package in place for that purpose, that this council would be acting directly against the wishes and the will of the people that they represent. So again, I just wanted to be here to vocalize that, and as a reminder, to encourage to follow what the people have asked you to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mason. Currently have no more speaker requests on forms on items 11 through 19. Anybody wish to speak on any of those items on the non-consent calendar? Seeing none, I'm going to close public comment. We go to item number 11, introduction and first reading of ordinance 6046, an ordinance separating the city's vision fund and capital improvement accounts into separate funds by amending chapter 3.16 of the Rapid City Municipal Code. Go to Richie Nordstrom.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Move to table.
Motion to table, Richie Nordstrom, second by Darla Drew. No discussion on tabling motions. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Roll call.
No.
Aye. Okay, motion passes. Item number 12, Hanny Shafi, discussion on parking in Kansas City Street into the public safety building. Sir, you have the floor. No talking on this.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Hani Shafi with Dream Design, and we own a couple of properties along Kansas City Street. 2 buildings are at 520 and 528 Kansas City Street. And then we have the area between, most of the area between 1st Street till 4th Street along the south side of Kansas City Street. You know, we have 2 concerns. One is the parking at the 300 block of Kansas City Street, where there is long-term parking available on the south side, but not on the north side. But I'm just talking to Mike from the county Buildings and Ground, and he has a map that makes it a little bit better. And I think if we do his map, that will be acceptable to us, and I think I'll have him talk on that behalf. But as far as the meters parking and the new ordinance that you folks are trying to do, we really are concerned with the 10-hour parking along Kansas City Street, because currently we are, in the downtown business district, and every time the parking comes up, we always voice the same concerns. And I think I have a smaller presentation for you. I don't know if I can get it up. Just to give you an idea, the area that is in the dark is the downtown business district, and that extends from the alley south of the railroad tracks, and it goes to the north side of Quincy Street, from Mount Rushmore Road in the west to 5th Street, and 1 block east of 5th Street on the east. And those folks, when you do ordinances, you really don't want to do them just for today. You want to do planning for the future of the community. When we do designs, we do them for 25, 35, or 40 years, or whatever it is, depending on the item that we're dealing with. And, just changing the parking ordinances, almost is beginning to be like really a lot just in the last 5 years or so. I realize it's a dynamic situation, but we really got to do the planning so we don't have to do the change every time. Currently the business improvement district is highlighted in the magenta color, and it almost overlaps the downtown business district, as far as the zone 1 of the business improvement districts. Those people, regardless if they are on Kansas City Street, Main Street, or St. Joe, they pay the same business improvement district tax. And it's not right and fair to be taxed, for services that you really don't be treated the same like everybody else within that same taxation area. So I urge you that whatever is applied to Main and St. Joe should be applied to Kansas City Street. Data is what really should be dictating what we do, not emotions, not complaints, not the squeaking wheels. I looked at the aerial maps for the city. This is 2008, I believe. And if you look at the parking distribution, and I don't really know if I think I could zoom it in a little bit, but this is 2008 parking. And if you look at the area to the west or to the east of 5th Street, which is about right in here, east of 5th Street, there is hardly any parking on St. Joe and Main Street, but there is equal parking on Kansas City Street, similar to Main and St. Joe. And if you move forward, to 2012, the same also applies. Unfortunately, in 2012, you could tell that the picture was taken on a Saturday, and it was taken up around 11 o'clock in the morning. That's where the aerial. The one in 2008 was taken in a working day, and it might have been about noon or so. Or actually, that one is about 11 o'clock. The other one is about noon. Then if you look at today's, this is 2000, the late, mid to late 2014. And if you look at the parking downtown, this gives you an idea. This is 7th Street, and this is 6th Street right in here, and this is 5th Street. If you look at St. Joe, Kansas City Street, and you'll find out that, and the same thing with Main, the parking distribution is the same. So that tells me that those businesses in Kansas City Street require the same amount of parking or similar parking needs, similar to those who are located on Main and St. Joe. And I think since they're paying the same tax, They're within the Business Improvement District. They are within the Downtown Central Business District. They have the same zoning requirements as everyone else along St. Joe and Main Street. So therefore, they should be afforded the same treatment and the same parking as shown on the ordinances. Putting the 10-hour parking along Kansas City Street, I realize there are not too many businesses except my big mouth up here, because most of those businesses are nonprofit. There are churches. There is the phone company that has probably about 12 employees in that big building. It's occupied by, like a communication center type deal. The churches, are places of worship. Typically they hold services either Wednesday night or Sundays. During Sunday, you'll see the parking extending all the way almost from 5th Street to Mount Rushmore Road. But churches also serve as a place where folks have funerals or sometimes weddings. Most weddings are during the weekend, but most funerals are uncontrolled, and a lot of them are held during the weekdays. And sometimes you'll have parking extending all the way from 5th Street to Mount Rushmore Road, and rightfully so. And I think we should open that to them because of the unavailability of public parking within the downtown. And if we left it as 10 hours, then folks could come in and put in $2.50 for the whole day, and come in the next day, put in $2.50 and not be moving their car for the entire 24 hours, because at night we don't enforce the parking. So that really creates a lot of concerns, because even if we started at 6th Street going west, we still, between 6th and 5th, where my business exists, is going to have the overflow from the other businesses west of us when there are people parked there overnight. So I really have concerns with the 10 hours. And then as far as the area along NAU across from the courthouse, we would like to coordinate that with the county. And I apologize that I did not call the county ahead of time. Mike just gave me a map, and I think we'll work something out with them folks, and then we'll come to you, or they will come to you with something, because we still want to allow the accessibility to the county in a manner that is suitable to public service. Thank you for your time, and I hope you still address our concerns with the 10 hours, and we'll hope to work with you in the area with the county later on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shafi. The chair will recognize Darla Drew. Are you in the queue?
I have a couple questions for Hanny. So I just need some clarification here. What are you asking for?
What I'm asking for is actually, I have concerns with the 10 hours and with the parking in the front of the NAU or in front of the courthouse. We would like to coordinate with the courthouse before I really could come up with a formal request. I intended to have the same application on both sides, but I did not really put in mind what the courthouse needs too. So I was kind of selfish in my request, which is not the neighborly thing to do. And I apologize that I did not communicate with the county ahead of time.
So you're just making a case, and then you have to go back and check with the courthouse, or what?
Yes, I will check with the courthouse in the area east of 4th Street. And on the 10-hour, I urge you not to do it, because it really concerns us. I think I have two items on the agenda. One is the new ordinance, and if you want me to put the map that the courthouse has, is it okay with you, Mike?
Because I thought that
So, Mr. Shafi, just for clarification, we're on second reading of the parking ordinance. So there'll be another reading at council. Correct, Mr. Landine? So you'll have a chance to, you're asking for a change to include the area in front of NAU on both sides of the street into that part of the new ordinance we're adapting. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, but I would like to get you the final recommendation as soon as I coordinate with the courthouse, hopefully today or tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Does that
thank
answer your
you.
question, Darla?
So I move to acknowledge the report from Hanny Shafi.
You can't do a motion yet.
I can't?
You already
Okay.
talked.
All right, sorry. Okay,
Thanks.
thank you.
Okay. Sure. Chair recognizes Steve Laurenti.
Thank you, Chair, and I'll make a move to acknowledge.
Motion by Laurenti to acknowledge, second by Nordstrom. Great.
Thank you, Chair. And if I could ask Mr. Shaffey a couple of questions here as well, just to further clarify. Annie, so at this point, you don't know exactly what parking you want on both sides because you still want to coordinate with the county, and then you're going to come back with a formal request. Is that what you're planning to do?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. Thank you. I appreciate that. And then, Chair, I had a couple of questions for both the police department and possibly finance as well. Just in anticipation, granted, it's got to come back and it'll go through 2 readings, I assume, or maybe we'll try to get this put in with the regular ordinance.
Well, police department is in the queue, so yes, go ahead and ask.
Okay, Chief, and that's what I wanted to ask was, were you involved, and I believe this went to staff at one time, this request? Correct me if I'm wrong, and if you can allude to that and then what you wanted to speak about on this particular agenda item, please.
Okay, so the particular agenda item that we're on right now is number 12, which is the discussion of the parking near the public safety building.
Correct.
And I think the discussion thus far has blended all 3 of the agenda items that are related to parking. So on item number 12, I appreciate Mr. Shaffey's request that you allow him more time to work with the county. Mike Cool with Pennington County Buildings and Grounds is present here. And the way that got put on the agenda was simply an email sent by Mr. Shaffey to some city staff, and that just occurred within a week or 2 ago. And when that was received, I went to the county to give them a heads up because I know that they have invested millions of dollars in the redevelopment of that area and have coordinated with the engineers that have redesigned the streets and those types of things. So I think the best starting point is for the county's building committee to engage with Mr. Shaffey as he requested, and if they come up with an agreement to come back to us for approval. So I think his recommendation is appropriate, and that there's a likelihood that an agreement will be worked out, and so I think that's the direction that we should go.
Okay. Did you have something else, Chief, that you wanted to address?
Not on
this
number
item?
12, no.
Okay. And then if I could, Chair, Finance, if I could,
Sure.
Since this will be coming back to us, I just want to not necessarily give them a heads up. Obviously, they're here, they know. But I want to know, ultimately, and this is always an important factor for me when it comes to parking, because we have had a lot of changes, unfortunately, recently, good and bad. But my question is, I want to know how this is going, or what we think, what kind of effect this may have, if it be negative or positive, on our ability to meet our bond requirements. So that's always an important thing for me when we're talking parking with finance. So if you could just elude on that just a little bit, or if you want to wait until we have a formal request.
I will. Are you talking on number 12?
On number 12.
Okay.
On number 12.
The first I had heard of this is when I was forwarded the email from Mr. Shaffey. I do have concerns as far as what it will do with their revenue source. If they're going to go back and work on a plan, I'd rather see what their plan is so I can analyze that prior to giving an opinion. But I will tell you, if you take both sides and put it to all-day parking, there is potential loss for revenue. If you put it to 3-hour parking, there's potential for increased revenue. If there's something in between that I'm not aware of, I don't know what would happen.
Okay, thank you for that. And I yield the floor.
Thank you. Chair recognizes Alderman Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had a question. I'm not sure you're going to answer this, but which side of the street has what type of parking? I guess I would point it to Carl. Chief.
Chief Chagris.
The north side of Kansas City Street between 3rd and 5th Street is enforced as a 2-hour parking zone. The south side of Kansas City Street in that area has no regulations.
Okay, so it looks like that doesn't make much sense to me, but so I'm hoping that Mr. Shaffey can work something out so he can have parking for his people that are using his building. So, thanks.
Okay, do we have a motion? Yeah, we do a motion to acknowledge, okay. Any further discussion on this topic? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 13 is Dan Sefner, request for approval of 10-hour meters on Kansas City Street from 6th Street to Mount Rushmore Road. Chair recognizes Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And my question is are these, if you're there for 8 hours or 10 hours, it's $2.50? Is that correct? I would ask that to somebody who has knowledge of that parking meter.
It is a quarter an hour. The only place that's 50 cents an hour is in the ramp. So it would be $2.50 to park all day for the 10-hour meters if you plug the whole 10 hours.
So this does have a potential to change our financing again, which,
You know, there's potential there right now because we have we have 2-hour, 4-hour, 8-hour, 10-hour meters, and they're all a quarter an hour. So it will keep people from having to go out and plug meters in the middle of the day. There's potential that if people have gotten parking tickets, that we would lose out on parking ticket revenue if they plug for 10 hours versus going and plugging every 2 hours. But again, there's no way to tell. The other question that comes to mind anyway, whether they're 2-hour parking meters or 10-hour parking meters, are with a 3-hour increased time, are people going to shift where they're parking anyway to where they can park for 3 hours at a time for free versus plugging a meter? And that, nobody knows the answer to that.
Mr. Chair, I have another question. What does it cost to rent a space in the parking ramp? That would be to Pauline.
Covered spaces are $44 a month, and the third level or uncovered is $34.
I guess at a quarter an hour, you could be better off renting one of these metered spots probably.
We do have a
Maybe
waiting
if you did
list,
10
don't we?
hours, you could have $50 a month if you worked 5 days a week. So, all right, thanks.
Okay, Steve Laurenti, you wish to speak still, or? No, good. Okay. We do not currently have a motion. Move to acknowledge. Motion to acknowledge by Nordstrom, second by Laurenti. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. I'm sure we'll see you on Monday night, both of you. Oh, yes, Mr. Chaffee's already left the building. Okay, item number 14 is second reading of recommendation of ordinance 6040 to fix an error in section 15.14.150 of the Rapid Municipal Code concerning International Property Maintenance Code. Motion approved by Laurenti, second by Drew, yeah. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 15 is second reading of ordinance 6041, repealing the international existing building code by deleting chapter 15.15 of the Rapid Municipal Code. Motion by Nordstrom to approve, second by Laurenti. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Item number 16, second reading and recommendation of ordinance 6042, amending the climatic table of the International Building Code by amending section 15.12.508 of the Rapid Municipal Code. Move to approve. Motion by Nordstrom, second by Drew. Any further discussion? Easy for you to say. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 17 is introduction and first reading of ordinance 6013, an ordinance amendment to permit hobby beekeeping in residential areas by amending section 17.04.035, 17.08.020, and 17.10.020 of the Rapid Municipal Code. I move approval. I don't move approval. I can't move anything. Sorry. Motion by Laurenti, second by Nordstrom. And we have Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to ask our legal counsel if there's a provision for this for like townhomes and apartment complexes.
Absolutely. Please approach the. I know. Carla, would you please identify yourself for the record?
Carla Cushman, Assistant City Attorney. Ordinance 6013 would allow hobby beekeeping in low-density residential, in medium-density residential, and in high-density residential. That would be an allowed use, a permitted use in all of those districts.
So a person could actually have them in an apartment complex or a townhouse?
Well, the city wouldn't prohibit it. I think it's probably fair to say that an apartment building wouldn't allow it under most rental agreements, but the city would leave that up to the owner of the property.
Mr. Chair, and then one more question. So,
Sure.
But if you own a townhome, then two people who actually own either side, one could have bees right next to them with no separation, or a condo.
Well, this ordinance, the agenda item in front of you right now doesn't address that, but the next one are hobby beekeeping provisions in Title VI, and that provides that the beehives must be located at least 15 feet of any residence on an adjacent lot. Townhomes are generally platted on their own lots, so it would require a distance of 15 feet between the hives and any residents on the neighboring lot.
Is this a first, this is a second, no, it's a first reading? Okay.
It's first reading for
I'll
both.
come back. I don't mind the bee ordinance. Obviously, they're very careful of how they operate, and I think they've had good results, and I think they're necessary, but I just don't like the idea of the apartment complexes, and I could see landlords out there having to change their leases. I see townhome people having issues. I mean, I don't have a problem if you own your property and it's a residential home and you want to put bees on it. You know, I have no problem with that. But if somebody wanted, I have already spoken, so I can't make an amendment to it. So, thank you.
Alderman Steve Laurenti.
Thank you, Chair. And I just wanted to acknowledge what was said by the Attorney's Office, that item 18, if you haven't read it, I would say that you should, because it outlines a lot of the definitions of spacing with property lines and allowable amounts of beehives based on, the size of the property. So I would encourage my colleagues to take a look at that, that aren't at this meeting, that will be voting at the next council meeting, because it does outline all of those things, and I'm very comfortable with where we're at. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Renzi. Alderwoman Darla Drew.
Well, just a quick question. Does this require a permit for beekeeping, so that kind of thing would be have to be reviewed before the person put in the hive?
No, there is no provision in either of the ordinances for a city license. That was discussed, but it is not a part of this final ordinance. Just an FYI, the state does license hobby beekeepers for limited reasons. I think you have to get an annual license with the state for both commercial and hobby beekeeping operations.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
And last but not least, Richie Nordstrom.
Absolutely, not least. Carla, I want to thank you very much for doing all the research and everything and doing all the checking on all the provisions that came up with this ordinance. So I applaud your lot of time that you spent on this. So thank you very much for doing that. The other question I have for you is, I'll call it a comfort level between the tenants and the landlords renting a property. Do you see us needing to get into that business?
Are you talking about an apartment building sort of situation?
It could even come to, I'm trying to think of housing situation as well.
Mm-hmm.
Single-family houses, I don't see a problem there, but there is the apartment buildings, of course, and I'm not sure if there's any other issues between landlords and tenants that we should be getting involved with.
Well, I guess in my own history of being a renter, all the leases always mentioned animals. Either no animals were allowed, or a cat or dog or whatever. So I think it's probably likely that a lot of the existing leases already address this. So I guess there's an argument to be made that the city should leave that up to the individual landlords to address however they see fit. Of course, the city could, limit it to certain types of structures as well. If you wanted to limit it to low density or to single family homes, I think you could, or limit it so that it wouldn't involve an apartment building of multi families. That would be something that you could choose to do if you wanted to.
Okay, thank you.
I really don't think that'll be an issue. Alderman Ron Weifenbach.
I would have a tendency to agree. In reality, it probably won't be an issue, but when it does come back to you, and the landlords say, is a bee an animal, whatever, I mean, it'd be a simple amendment. I can support whatever the council decides, but it will cause a problem, and it will come back to the city in some level. I don't think there's that many beekeepers that it's going to be a big issue, but. Thanks.
Motion is to approve first reading. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 18 is introduction and first reading of ordinance 6010, an ordinance to regulate hobby beekeeping by adopting Chapter 6.20 of the Raps Municipal Code.
Move to approve.
Motion by Laurenti, second by Drew to approve. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Item number 19 is second reading and recommendation of ordinance 6045 to increase the amount of time allowed on on-street parking areas in downtown and repeal the graduated penalty for time parking violations by amending section 10.44.010, 10.44.070, and 10.40.205 of the Raps Municipal Code. Anyone? Bueller? Motion by Laurenti, second by Weifenbach. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Motion to adjourn. Motion by Weifenbach, second by Laurenti. All in favor, say aye. Aye. We are adjourned.